If you're over 50 and you want science-backed information to protect your health, subscribe to this channel right now. New videos every week. What if your body has been warning you about diabetes for the past 10 years, and you've been ignoring every single signal, not because you weren't paying attention, but because every one of these signs looks like something else entirely? Tiredness that feels like stress, vision that seems like age, skin changes that seem like nothing, a tingling in your feet that comes and goes. Here's what most people don't know. Type 2 diabetes doesn't appear overnight. Research shows it develops silently over a decade or more, and during that entire window, the body sends signals, quiet ones, easy to dismiss ones. Today I'm going to show you 6 of those signals, the ones that show up years, sometimes a full decade, before a diagnosis. Some of them you'll recognize immediately. And sign number 5 is the one that shocks people the most, because it appears somewhere most people would never think to look. Stay until the end, because in the final section, I'll show you 3 specific foods that research links directly to slowing down this process and improving how your body handles blood sugar after 50. Let's get into it. Before we get to the signs, there's one thing I need to clear up, because it changes everything about how you interpret what you're about to hear. Most people think diabetes is a blood sugar problem, and yes, eventually it is. But that's the end of the story, not the beginning. The beginning is insulin resistance. Here's how it works. Every time you eat, your pancreas releases insulin to move sugar from your blood into your cells. That's normal. That's healthy. But after years of processed foods, poor sleep, chronic stress, and low physical activity, the cells start ignoring insulin's signal. They become resistant to it. So the pancreas compensates. It produces more and more insulin to get the same job done. For years, sometimes a decade, your blood sugar stays in a normal range on routine tests. But the system is already under enormous stress. That phase, insulin resistance without elevated blood sugar, is exactly when these 6 signs appear. And here's why this matters for you specifically. After 50, insulin sensitivity drops naturally as part of aging, which means the window from early resistance to full diagnosis can compress. Things that took 10 years in your 30s can accelerate significantly in your 50s. That's why catching these signs early is one of the highest value things you can do for your health right now. Here's what to look for. Sign number 1, fatigue that hits hardest after meals. Not general tiredness, not end-of-day exhaustion. I'm talking about a specific kind of crash, the kind that comes 30 to 60 minutes after eating, especially after a carbohydrate-heavy meal. You sit down, you feel a wave of fatigue so heavy it's hard to keep your eyes open. Some people call it a food coma. Most people chalk it up to a big meal. It's not about the size of the meal, it's about what's happening with insulin. When cells are resistant to insulin, blood sugar spikes sharply after eating, and then the body overcompensates, releasing a flood of insulin that drives blood sugar too low too fast. That sharp drop is what triggers the crash. This pattern, energy spike, then dramatic drop, is one of the earliest and most consistent markers of developing insulin resistance. It's been documented in research for decades, and yet it's one of the most consistently misread signs in adults over 50 because fatigue has so many other explanations. If this crash happens to you regularly, more than 3 times a week, it deserves a conversation with your doctor. The next sign is physical, and it shows up somewhere most people don't think to check. Sign number 2, dark patches of skin on the neck, armpits, or groin. You might have noticed a darkening of the skin at the back of your neck, or under your arms, or in the fold of the groin. A velvety, slightly thickened texture, different from a tan, different from a bruise, sometimes mistaken for dirt that won't wash off. This condition has a name, acanthosis nigricans, and it is a direct physical marker of elevated insulin levels in the bloodstream. When insulin is chronically elevated, which is exactly what happens during years of insulin resistance, it binds to receptors in the skin and stimulates abnormal cell growth. The result is that characteristic dark velvety discoloration. Studies show that acanthosis nigricans is present in a significant percentage of people who will later be diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, often years before their blood sugar tests come back abnormal. If you have never heard of this sign before, you are not alone. Most routine checkups don't include a skin assessment for it, but knowing it exists and knowing what it means can put you years ahead of a diagnosis. Check the back of your neck right now. If you see it, bring it up at your next appointment. Sign number 3 involves something that most people over 50 accept as completely normal. Sign number 3, increased thirst and more frequent urination, even mildly. Here's the thing about this sign. Most people know it's associated with diabetes, but they assume it only counts if it's extreme, constantly running to the bathroom, unquenchable thirst, waking up multiple times at night. That's not quite right. The subtle version of this sign is what appears years before diagnosis. You're mildly thirstier than usual. You notice you're refilling your water bottle more often. You make one extra trip to the bathroom at night when you used to sleep straight through. Here's the mechanism. When blood sugar rises above a certain threshold, even temporarily, even while still in the pre-diabetic range, the kidneys try to filter out the excess glucose. They pull extra water to do it. You urinate more. You get thirsty to replace the lost fluid. You urinate again. It's a quiet cycle in the early stages, easy to explain away, especially in adults over 50, where changes in bladder and kidney function are already expected. The key question isn't whether you're using the bathroom more than before, it's whether this change happened gradually, without a clear explanation like a new medication or a dramatic increase in fluid intake. If the answer is yes, that change is worth tracking. Sign number 4, blurry vision that comes and goes, not permanent vision loss, not a sudden change that sends you to a doctor, just occasional blurriness, vision that seems sharp in the morning and soft in the afternoon. Difficulty reading something you could read easily last month, eyes that feel like they take longer to adjust. Here's what's happening. The lens of the eye contains fluid that adjusts in shape depending on blood sugar levels. When blood sugar rises, even modestly, even temporarily, the fluid shifts and the lens changes shape slightly. Vision blurs. When blood sugar drops back down, the vision clears. Because this fluctuates with blood sugar rather than staying permanently altered, most people assume their glasses prescription needs updating. Some buy over-the-counter readers, some wait for their next eye exam, and the underlying cause, blood sugar instability, goes undetected for years. If you've noticed your vision shifting at different times of day, especially after meals, that pattern is clinically significant. An eye doctor can often detect early diabetic changes in the retinal blood vessels before they cause symptoms, which is exactly why annual eye exams are one of the most underused tools in early diabetes detection. 2 more signs to go, and number 5 is the one that appears in a place most people never connect to blood sugar. Sign number 5. Tingling, numbness, or a burning sensation in the feet or hands. Most people who experience these assume it's circulation, or sitting in a bad position, or a pinched nerve. Sometimes it is, But when it happens repeatedly, especially at night, especially in both feet symmetrically, especially with no obvious positional cause, it deserves a closer look. What's happening is early peripheral neuropathy. Chronically elevated insulin and blood sugar damage the small blood vessels that supply the nerves in the extremities. The nerves lose their blood supply and begin to malfunction. The result is that characteristic tingling, numbness, or burning, starting in the toes, moving up the feet, sometimes into the hands. This is not a late-stage complication. Research published in journals of neurology and diabetes has documented detectable nerve changes in people with prediabetes. People whose blood sugar is elevated but not yet in the diabetic range. This means peripheral neuropathy can begin silently, years before any diabetes diagnosis, while most routine blood tests still show numbers in the normal zone. If this is happening in your feet, even occasionally, do not dismiss it as poor circulation or aging. Ask your doctor for a full metabolic panel and specifically request a fasting insulin test, not just a glucose test. Fasting insulin is the marker that catches insulin resistance early, before glucose numbers change. One sign left, and this one shows up every night. Sign number 6, sleep disruption, difficulty staying asleep, especially in the second half of the night. Not trouble falling asleep, not insomnia in the classic sense. The specific pattern here is waking up between 2 and 4 in the morning, often alert, sometimes sweaty, and finding it difficult to fall back asleep. This can happen 2, 3, 4 nights a week, and most people attribute it to stress, age, or the need to use the bathroom. Here's what's actually going on. Blood sugar fluctuates overnight. In people with insulin resistance, blood sugar can drop too low in the early hours of the morning, a phenomenon called reactive hypoglycemia. When blood sugar drops, the body releases cortisol and adrenaline to bring it back up. Those stress hormones wake you up. The result is that distinctive 2 to 4 a.m. waking, alert, sometimes with a racing heart, sometimes slightly shaky or hungry, that resolves on its own after 20 to 30 minutes. Compounding this, poor sleep itself worsens insulin resistance. One night of disrupted sleep measurably reduces insulin sensitivity the following day. This creates a self-reinforcing cycle. Blood sugar instability disrupts sleep, and disrupted sleep worsens blood sugar instability. For adults over 50, where sleep architecture is already changing with age, this cycle can accelerate quickly and silently. If you recognize this pattern, the early morning waking, the cortisol surge, the difficulty returning to sleep, it's one of the most actionable signs on this list. Because improving sleep quality is one of the fastest ways to begin improving insulin sensitivity, and that leads directly to the practical section. Now for the part I promised at the start. 3 foods with solid research behind them specifically for improving how the body handles blood sugar in adults over 50, and how to use them in a realistic, sustainable way. First, cinnamon, half a teaspoon daily with food. Ceylon cinnamon, not the common cassia variety, contains compounds called type A polymers that mimic insulin's action at the cellular level. Multiple controlled studies show that regular consumption of cinnamon reduces fasting blood sugar and improves insulin sensitivity. The key detail: it needs to be Ceylon cinnamon taken consistently with a meal, not as a supplement in isolation. Half a teaspoon stirred into oatmeal, yogurt, or a smoothie every morning is enough to activate this effect over time. Second, apple cider vinegar. 1 tablespoon in water before your largest meal. The acetic acid in apple cider vinegar slows gastric emptying, meaning food moves more slowly from the stomach into the small intestine. This flattens the blood sugar spike that follows a meal by extending the time it takes for carbohydrates to be absorbed. A meta-analysis of several clinical trials found that regular pre-meal vinegar consumption reduced post-meal blood sugar by a measurable and consistent margin in people with insulin resistance. 1 tablespoon in a glass of water 5 minutes before your largest meal of the day. Third, fiber, specifically soluble fiber before carbohydrates. Soluble fiber found in oats, psyllium husk, legumes, and chia seeds forms a gel in the digestive tract that physically slows carbohydrate absorption. Research shows that eating fiber before or with carbohydrates produces a significantly lower blood sugar response. The practical application: start your meals with vegetables, a small portion of legumes, or a glass of water with a teaspoon of psyllium husk. This single habit has been shown to measurably reduce A1C levels over a 12-week period. Important note: if you are currently taking medication for blood sugar management, do not make changes to your treatment based on this video alone. Bring these approaches to your doctor and track your numbers together. These strategies are evidence-based complements to medical care, not replacements for it. Today you saw the 6 silent signs that the body sends years before a diabetes diagnosis, from post-meal fatigue and dark skin patches to tingling in the feet and that specific 2 a.m. waking pattern. And you saw 3 practical research-backed foods that can directly support your blood sugar health after 50. The most important thing to take away from this video is this: a diagnosis is not the beginning of the story. The signals come first. And now you know what they look like. Catching them early doesn't just change your numbers, it changes your options. If this video was useful to you, please hit the like button. It helps this channel grow and reach more people who need this information. Subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next videos. And share this with someone over 50 you care about. A family member, a friend, someone who keeps dismissing symptoms they can't explain. This might be exactly what they needed to see. Let me know in the comments. Which of these 6 silent signs have you noticed? And did you already know about sign number 2, the skin change? I read every comment. See you in the next video.